Welcome back, everybody, to the assembly room. In this episode, we're going to disassemble the Magneto and clean it up and reassemble it, and hopefully we got sparks. So when you do the disassembly, you sure want to get every screwdriver you have in your collection out, because there's so many different headed screws on this thing that you want to have the correct screwdriver to fit each head, and you might even have to do a little grinding on them to make sure they're good and sharp when you do this. So the trick is to find the correct screwdriver for each screw head and then start disassembling. And be careful as you go, because the pot metal is sometimes pretty brittle and can break easily, so you make sure you take good care in disassembling it. Well, it's pretty well coming apart, except I got one screw underneath here that holds this assembly on with the adjuster arm, and that just absolutely will not come out of there. So I think I'm going to have to drill it out, which means this one's already been messed up before, so that screw is already gone. I got the other two out on the other side, but I have not been able to budge this one, and I can't get the rotor out. And it'd help a lot if I could get that piece off, and then I could pull the gear and the rotor out. I got this screw loosened up, a little flat lock washer in there. But I don't think I can get in there behind it to pull it off. And I have a puller that'll pull that out. Oh, but I have to have that piece off to use it to get underneath the lobe. So I'm going to have to work on getting that screw out of there. And then I think I'm going to junk the rest of it and go find a better housing to start building back with. So with that, I'll sign off for now. So here's another left-hand turn. Oh, I wanted to show you how to pull that cam off. I think that's just an adjustable battery cable puller, but it works really good for those. And that cam is specific to left-hand drive Magneto, so I'm going to keep that handy. But we'll start taking this one apart. It looks like the main housing might be good. Looks like maybe these screws are still have the threads in them, but a lot of the external pieces are broke, like all the front lug, which we got from the other one. So maybe we can make one work out of these two. And that's a 4-pole cap that isn't appropriate for what we're doing. But there's that's a pretty good one there. I think they it said on here that it was overhauled in 1980. So if I remember right, when they shipped it to me, this got broke. But we may not have to tear everything apart on this. See if we can get this ugly gear off the front. That's a tough one. Have to get a socket on that. Might have to go get a bigger water pump pliers. Most of the time those just pop right off. Especially with the way I can get in here. Seems like it just popped right off. And that piece is specific to a left-hand turn Magneto too. You can kind of tell how much magnetism they got in there when you stick them together and try to pull them apart. Hopefully these come apart a little easier. I did save this one mostly. It had one that's completely broken out and the other one would probably hold again. But that's pieces specific to John Deere with that adjustment arm on there. But I'll clean it all up, put in new points, and check the magnets. And I think I'll put this coil in. It looks like one that was in operation and working. So there's one wire you have to take off, this lower one down here, to pull that whole assembly off. And now you can pull everything out the front, get it cleaned up. I think this one's probably going to be pretty decent. Careful with that little wire that goes down through the bottom. And then this cam back here has got to have an L on it for left hand right there. Got an L. It's kind of hard to see right there, but it is a left hand mag. And I think the bearings are pretty good in this one. They run pretty smooth. The gear is pretty good. So I think we're going to be able to make one between these two. I think the gear is probably pretty good. So I think just clean it up, lube it, check the components, and put it back together. So until we come back and start putting it back together, I'll sign off for now. Well, I determined that these gears, this one was a pretty good one, the brass gear that runs on the other gear in here, but this gear in here is about halfway wore out, and I had a new one, and so I'm trying to figure out how to get that off. There's supposed to be a puller that you stick into a little hole on each side of the gear and pull it off, but I don't have that puller, so I'm pulling the bearing and the gear off at the same time. I took the screws out of the armature, and I am now pulling it all off, and I came to a stop. Why did it stop? I thought I was home free on getting that out of there. I got the bearing pulled off, and I can't figure out why that didn't keep coming. It must, the gear must go into the housing here, and the housing must not be, well, it's got to be big enough. Unless my bearing went up, I suppose my bearing went up against the keyway on the gear. I bet is what happened. I suppose I'm not pulled off enough that I can get it coming. So yeah, that's what happened. The keyway for the gear came up against the bearing. Got that off, and I will press that back down on there. Press it all back together. I think I'll try to get that keyway out of there. shaft down underneath there, touching underneath the bottom down in here, so I can drive down that bearing a little bit, I think. Get that felt out of there. I think I can put my flange screws back in there and press my gear back down on there. I think I'll oil that gear or that bearing a little bit. I got it all cleaned up, so it gives me an opportunity to get some oil in that. There's a dowel that goes in a hole there. Let's make sure you get it all together right. So what I did is I used a puller to pull off this gear. It's got the teeth pretty sharp on it, and I had a new one. And so I took these screws out so I could pull the bearing and the gear off, because I didn't have a puller that would go into this hole here. So I pulled the whole the bearing and the gear off until it came to the keyway. And now I'm putting it back together, putting the screws back in the armature. I've oiled the bearing. There it goes. The keyway went back now. So I'll put that felt back in there. Okay, now I'll put the cam back on there. Okay, there's a little keyway for the cam, and you make sure that you get that in there, and the recessed goes to the outside with the L on it. You can see the L right there. It means left-hand turn. Could be difficult getting that in there. Okay, looks like got that in there in good shape. Maybe I'll drive it down. Okay, looks like it's all together correctly. Put the screw in the end. Takes a little extra persuasion for that lock washer. Hold the gear over here. Tighten that up. Okay, that's it for that end. Okay, I'll oil this bearing and put the felt on there. Now we've got the bearings oiled. Now we'll put the housing in, and we'll put a little oil around. Maybe I'll put a little grease around this little brass fitting here. Just a little dab in there. And then that runs around on this part right here. And then this goes on. Put a little bit of grease in here on this bushing too. They're supposed to oil down from the top here too, but as little as this is going to get used, I probably put grease in and it'll last the rest of its lifetime. See if I can pull that together. I don't want to put a lot of pressure on it because I don't want to break it. But put a little pressure on it. Those little dowel pins on the bottom. Try those in a little bit. Okay. I forgot one thing. I forgot my wire that goes on the bottom, so I'll take that back off. I had a feeling I was forgetting something. Gotta be real careful so you don't break this pot metal. And putting that wire back in there, it looked like it was pretty good shape. Gotta feed that underneath there. Now we'll try the front cover again. I think I'm ready to put the lug part in front. Now on the spring, I will have to find a little nail or something to stick in there. So when I push back that spring so I can get the other half of my lug in there. I can hold the spring, so I'll be right back. Okay, I'm ready to work on the lug here. So I've used the little lever over here to stick in the hole to hold the spring. And then you want to make sure that your spring's in good shape. Just put a little bit of oil on it, not very much. There's a wick inside of that. You still have one with the wick, but you want to make sure your spring is not worn through in spots where it's going to break soon. And then you insert that into where that goes. You can pull out your and there's really no way you can get it wrong. The little spring goes over on the short side, and where the hole is to hold the spring back, that goes around the long way. So lubricate it a little bit, and then put your keyway in. And instead of trying to get I'm not really sure I like that washer. I think I'm going to go get one just a touch bigger. Okay, I got one just a little bit bigger so it slips on there better. But there's a slot for a cotter key in there. And I'm just not sure. The slot was not drilled straight enough to really get one through there. So I think I'm just going to leave the lock washer in there. for the dog. Probably put a little oil on that too. A little washer on the outside so the spring doesn't bind up into the cap. And let's see, I think I've got that in there right. That's the only way it can go in there. Put a little oil on this felt. That must be the wrong screw. Find a little lock washer for that one, so I can't quite put that in there yet. And I'll have to find a different one down here. Maybe it could be stripped out of there too. It looks, oh, that goes on the points. Okay, and then I gotta put a lock washer on behind that, but that's pretty well all put together. We'll move on to putting on the coil and the magnets. Okay, now we're ready to put the coil in and the little spark shield. You got to make sure your crimp is just about right so you can hold that in there tight but doesn't go in there real hard. And then we'll put the coil in. I tested that coil to ground on both circuits and it seemed to be fine. It looks like a good coil. It's hard to determine for sure, but unless you had a tester. And this is the original coil or a condenser, and I'm going to try it, see by chance if it'll spark. A lot of times that'll be no good, but it was the one that was actually in this mag. See how many times I can lose that. The good thing about the coil and the condenser, if they don't work, I can always, it's kind of the last piece that will go on there, so I can change them out later if I can't get it to spark. And these magnets were pretty, they're the ones that came out of it. I kind of suspect that somebody did some work on this mag back in the 80s. Because I've got some other pairs that are charged, but these seem to have more pull to them than those did, so I'm going to try them. Now we'll switch cameras to the back side here where I'll put in the gears and the points. Okay, on this gear here, there's a little mark. I think it's right there. Right there it is. This one right here. It's a little center punch mark. And I have to line that up with the mark on my gear right here. And to kind of know on these John Deere mags, if you have the dowel pin down at 6 o'clock, this mark is right around 1 o'clock. So we'll put a little bit of, I'm going to put a little couple little fiber discs in there, wear discs. And then a little bit of grease on there. I'm going to put a little bit of grease around the gear too. Just not very much. Okay, and then we'll insert that for the mark. Right there. You can see the mark right there and right there. And then we'll put the rotor in. Make sure the brush goes in, yeah, it's a little ways from the coil. Make sure that engages into the coil. And now the points. I've got a new set of points here. And I'll put just a little bit of grease on that. And then the other side of the points. That one's going to be a bigger points. I'll have to go run and find another point. So I found the correct point, screw-in point. And I can't gap those quite yet, but I can put that little bar across there. Should have probably found another screw for that. Make sure everything's clean, no rust on it and stuff. Trick is not to fling that screw across the room. Sure everything's tight. Make sure you got a good insulator underneath your points bar, and the screws are all insulated. Have insulation washers on them. Have that locking down the points. That'll give the felt a little oil. A little wiper. And these little screws are difficult. They're a shallow-headed little screw. I did not get my wire pulled through there. I had a screw for that here, and it has got knocked away, I think. I think I was counting on that one, but it got knocked away, I think. Okay, got one. Found a pretty nice one. Got a little lock washer and a little flat washer on there. So it should make good contact. Okay, I got one more. I might have to tighten that up later. I got it in there mostly. But everything turns nice. We'll set those points. That is just a little bit big to get in there. It's pretty close. Okay, looks good. Did not see anything. Oh, there's a spark. Okay. It has a chance. It's got some blue spark to it. Taking the trip off. Just spinning it by hand. Got some pretty good blue spark. I think we'll put on the cap and mount it on the tractor and see if it'll spark on the wire or on the plugs. And then the cap I've got all cleaned up. Make sure these brushes are all free and they're sticking out to where they'll hit the rotor cap or the rotor. I need to time it first, so I will screw it to the base and I'll meet you over at the tractor and I'll show you how to time it. Okay, I'm over here on the right side of the tractor and I got my control rods coming out of the tube and I've reworked the handles and the rods and got this connection in the correct position so I can hook up the spark advance, and then this one I'll have to bend up once I get the Magneto on. And my I'm on dead top center on the left hand side, so that'll aid in setting up the Magneto. So I'm ready to, I got the base on it, ready to set on. Got to get this spark advance rod connected. Oh, it's really close. You got to kind of work the spark advance rod up over the top of the throttle rod. Spark advance end on there and tight. There it goes. Okay. Now we'll take the cap off. And the mag's already turned into the right position, so I just have to get this coupling in there. One's got a narrow slot in and the other one's got the wider slot. The narrow one goes to the tractor side, and then you turn that on the governor. So the narrow one goes towards the tractor, and the wider slot is on the Magneto. And you want to have your rotor at about 2 o'clock, it says on the book, when you're at dead top on the left-hand side piston. Everything's tight. Can't even get that bolt in there. Tilt it back just a little bit more. There it goes. Then it falls out. Okay, got it started finally. Slowly work it in there. Make sure it's not binding as you're tightening it down somewhere. It holds down the back of the mag bracket. And make sure your drive is not binding as you tighten it down. Try to get your Magneto lined up with the governor as best you can. You can't have the coupling completely tight. It's got to have a little bit of free motion in there. If you get it tight in there, your impulse will not work. Looks very close. And the last thing you want to do is tighten up your disc on your governor. You want to have your rotor cap at 2 o'clock. Okay, now I got the spark advance hooked up. It goes from one end to the other. Now we have to bend this up. I think if I could get that up over the top of that now. Okay. Stick the rod in and the fork on the governor behind the washer. So I'm getting my rod bit here so I can hook it up. Probably could be bent a little bit more. I push back halfway back and then use that little piece of pipe so I don't bend it right at the threads. I don't want to bend it out here on the threads. I want that all to stay straight. So that pipe lets me go back there far enough to where I don't have to mess up the. And now we got to put the fork on. Slip that in behind the washer on the governor rod, and then insert the throttle rod into the fork. You want to try to get as good a linkages as you can find because they can get badly worn in these bosses, and then it's hard to adjust your tractor engine speed. Yeah, that rod doesn't want to slip in there, but I've got the set screw loose. It needs to be about flush on that fork with the rod. I must be up against the notch on the shaft with my set screw. It won't let me go back any further, so I guess we'll have to live with that. Now we'll put the jam nut on. We want to be able to pull this clear back with the handle to idle. That's clear back, and my handle is almost clear back. Let's see, I think I want to lengthen it just a bit. One turn maybe. That'll let me pull my handle clear back. Some cotter keys and put them in there, and we'll hook up the spark plug wires. These are originally made wires from the Brillman company. They have the little eyelets on the back end that hook up to the Magneto. So I'll put the cap on first. Check your brushes when you put it on. The long one goes on the front terminal. And then these wood blocks that hold the spark plug wires. I've got some originals, but if you're using the originals especially, you want to take them apart gently and treat them with the best of care because these blocks will split and you have to chase the threads to make sure your nuts go on easily. So you put the least amount of strain on those little blocks. And they go right in that little hole there on that back tank support. Okay, now I want the long one to go to the left hand side. Over the top, and then the short one to go over. And I do it in that orientation, so not to pull on one side of the block more than the other. And so this one will clip on here. That one's just about right length over on this side, but this one here seems to be a little long. But anyway, now I can pull the plugs out. Got the gasket yet to put in, and I will see if it sparks. You don't want to run those mags without the ability of the spark to get grounded. Otherwise, you'll burn up the coil or the condenser. Let's see the spark. Probably need to retard that spark and mark the flywheel. I've got a mark on the flywheel. Well, we'll see how it goes. Trip the mag. Oh, we got to tighten up. I forgot to tighten up the mag plate. And on these drives, they will slip easily. You think you have the bolts tight, and it just takes an over. You just want to tighten them up just as much as you can, because that impulse will get that disc to move. Okay, we'll roll it, see where we got on the spark. That should be, that was the right hand side. Now there shouldn't be any spark either side. And now this one should come up right there. And we're past quite a bit, so got to adjust. We'll back it up a little bit. Something got too tight in there now. There it was right there. And it's pretty darn close. It might be just a freckle too early now. I moved it just a little bit. I don't have enough play in here now to make the mag trip. I bowed that cup a little bit, I think. I don't think there's any way to do it but to loosen up the Magneto and push it out a little bit. That should have been. Okay, this one's got to be the top compression. Yep, there was a good spark. Good spark. Okay, we'll see if we're close to the mark. Almost dead on, so I think we'll try it. So here's where I am. This is where the flywheel says to have the spark strike at. And this mark here is just when the crank starts to come over the top. So I know one old timer told me, he says, It doesn't hurt to time it just a little past where it says on the flywheel. And that makes sure that you don't break your flywheel when it kicks back or something. So I think I'm going to adjust my mag just a little bit more. Retard the mag on the plate, and so I'm more in line with that mark. So I've loosened up my cap screws here for the disc, and I'm gonna move that back just a little bit, like right there. I probably moved it, an 1/8 of an inch. And I'll roll it back and see where I'm at on the mark now. Probably should have turned it about 1/4 inch. That was probably another 1/8 of an inch or so. Roll it back. Okay, that was almost perfect. I'll roll it back and try it again, make sure my plug is striking on that mark. Yep. Okay, we'll see on the marks. This is where the flywheel mark is, but this is probably 10 degrees after that. So it's real close. I think I'll try that and see how that works. So I will finish up a few things, and then on our next episode, I'll see if it'll start. So make sure you stay tuned, and we'll see you down the road.